All right, everybody. Welcome to Experience Talks, our monthly Zoomcast. Today, we're going to be talking about LGBTQ plus elder housing with three amazing guests. We have Dr. Imani Woody, who is the founder and CEO of Mary's House for Older Adults. Welcome. Alan Acosta, who's the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Los Angeles LGBT Center, and Dr. Kathleen Sullivan, Executive Director of Openhouse. So welcome all three of you. I'm excited to talk to you about this, and it's great to see all three of you. So first, I'd like each of you to just talk a bit about your organization and your work, what you do, the housing piece, the programs, all of it. Imani, can we start with you? Can you tell us about Mary's House?
Sure. I could talk about this all day, so give me the sign. Mary's House for Mary's House for Older Adults is the first one is being built in Washington, D.C., and it's my childhood home, the home I grew up in. And interestingly enough, my dad was one of the reasons that I decided to do this. He was got really ill, and we had to put him into a good facility. And at the end, we pulled him out. He went in continent and came out incontinent. And it wasn't because the people didn't love him or like him or take care of him, but it is the environment and the culture of nursing homes and facilities that he was just room 222. And he died, and he left me this home. And I remember thinking, how would he have been treated had he been an out gay male or an out lesbian or out trans person or non-binary person? So I wondered about that. How would he have been treated, and being older, and being an elder, right? He was like 87, and so then a colleague in a nice nursing home, upscale suburb nursing home, was found in his home. 5 days later, he had died, and he was found 5 days later. And that really raised the boat for us to build Mary's House for older adults, LGBTQ, SGL, same gender loving people, because of the stigma and the inability to bring your whole self to your world in your golden years. How is that going to happen? So at first I was just building it for me and my wife. We'd have, there'd be these 16 rooms, and we'd have a couple of them. It has grown that I probably won't live there. So we'll have to build another one in California for sure, right? We've had some contact with folks who had visited us from Russia, from France, and from I want to say Germany. So they're interested in us building Mary's House, which is a small model. It's like the Golden Girls model. We have 15 units. It's communal living. We're building family. There are lots of housing that's large, and for not lots, some, let me be clear. There's some housing for LGBTQ SGL folks, and it's large. We're going on the other side, that we're building small communal homes that provide some services for independent people. That's our first one. So we're doing it laterally. We want to build homes across the United States and internationally. And we want to go this way: assisted living, hospice, memory care. So.
Fantastic. And I hear there might be a groundbreaking for soon here, huh?
Yes, by the end of the year, we should have a groundbreaking, and next year we're going to lease up. That is the hope. So I'm gonna do a shameless plug. If you're interested, reach out to us at www.maryshousedc.org.
We love shameless here at Experience Talks. So be shameless, all three of you. Alan, how about telling us about your work at the Los Angeles LGBT Center?
Sure. Thank you. The center, Kathleen's going to laugh when I say this, the center is the largest LGBT organization in the world. We have nearly 800 employees, and We've been around for more than 50 years. My work here, during the 90s, I was on the center board. I went away to Stanford to work there for 12 years. And then at the time that I was on the board, I was on the search committee that hired Lori Jean, who is the executive director. She came back, she left and came back and as CEO, and then asked me to come and work in this new job called Director of Strategic Initiatives, which to this day I'd like to refer myself as director of this and that, because I get to do a lot of different things, which is nice. So, and one of them was early on, or right away, was to oversee Senior Services Department. That was before Kathleen came on board. And from the very beginning, in 2008, the center had passed a new strategic plan that included what was called intergenerational programming. And the thought was to create a campus-like site that would have both youth services, senior services, and housing for both. So that, this will give you an idea of what these big projects are like. The senior part of that will open hopefully next week. So it's only taken 13 plus years to make that dream come true. But in the interim, and Kathleen knows this very well, in the interim, a group came to us that had started the first seniors LGBT housing in the country, Triangle Square, and said, we need a bigger organization to sort of to subsume this project under it, because it was too much for this small organization that started it. So we took on Triangle Square, which is 104 units. Is that right, Kathleen?
I think it's 106.
106 units. See, I knew she'd correct me. Units of senior housing for LGBT people. And so we've been running that since about 2012, 13. I know I'm not right there, but somewhere in there. So we've been running that for that in the interim. So we got into senior housing a lot more quickly than we thought we were going to. This project that we opened in 2019, we opened this campus that included a huge administrative complex, a senior center that is now funded by the city of Los Angeles, finally, after years of work by Kathleen and others. And soon next week, the 100 units of senior housing. We have opened across the street a smaller complex of 24 units of transitional housing. They're mini units for youth. And then we have about another 75 beds on the campus of transitional housing and emergency housing, shelter housing for youth. So the dream has become a reality, or next week, God willing, and the city willing mostly, we'll get our certificate of occupancy on that building. And it's all leased up and people will be moving in that. So
that's fantastic. Congratulations. Can you talk just briefly about the culinary program as well? I thought that was a really cool piece of it.
Yes, I will. So when we were opening the campus, one of the members of our board of directors is a kind of a celebrity chef, and she's on TV a lot, and so
Susan Feniger, you can say her name.
Okay, Susan Feniger, that's her name. She's a lovely person, so we were talking about like programs that could involve both seniors and youth. And she was also saying, you have to build a really good kitchen there, like an industrial kitchen in your new campus, because then we can cater from there and all that. So she had a real big impact on how we thought about this. And then kind of helped birth this idea of an intergenerational program that would teach culinary skills, serious culinary skills to youth and seniors together. And so we've been running that. It's been extremely successful. It's been a mixed, both seniors and youth have been involved in it. Let's turn this off. It's been really successful. We've been turning out graduates, on a regular basis every 3 months, and who are well, up until the pandemic, we're getting jobs. There's a real shortage of trained culinary experts in the industry. So it's been doing really well. And then we just opened up, as part of this new campus that opened in 2019, we opened up the Liberation Coffee House. So that is now staffed by graduates of the culinary program, and the food there is prepared by them. In addition to that, the lunches that we provide to our seniors every day, about 100 lunches that people either can pick up or come and eat on the site, are prepared by the culinary programs as well. So we just figured it out in the last week or so that they have produced 250,000 meals in the time since they.
That's fantastic.
And they also produce the food for our youth center too, as well. So for the lunches so it's a really great program. I mean, it's hard not to get kind of like choked up when you're talking, because it's just been so great. And to see the youth and seniors working together, that really was the vision of the campus when we started this back in 2008. So.
It's fantastic. Such a great idea. Thank you, Alan. Kathleen, tell us about Open House.
I'm so inspired by Imani and Alan and all the work that the two of you are doing. I am the director of Open House, which started in 1998. It was really the brainchild of Dr. Marcy Edelman, who saw the need for developing affordable housing for LGBTQ older adults. San Francisco still ranks as the most expensive city in the country to live in. I just read an article the other day that New York is bouncing back, so it's coming close to being as expensive, but not quite still. And just like the experience that Alan talked about with how long it took to actually get all the funding in place and get the land, it took a long time to actually locate a site in San Francisco. And Imani, certainly you've had challenges. We all have challenges when we're developing space. I think I was having lunch with Dr. Edelman the other day, and I think she said it took 16 years to develop the first site, which is at 55 Laguna. And we now have grown to actually have what we consider an urban campus. So not exactly the same type of campus as is down at the center, but we are in 55, 65, 75, and 95 Laguna. So if you go up Laguna Street off of Market, you will see Open House and you'll see all of the gay pride flags. So we work with our partner Mercy Housing to develop housing for LGBTQ older adults and others who are in need in San Francisco. We have another project around the corner in Market Street, which we are Mercy Housing and Open House were given the contract by the city to develop that. So we're in the very early stages of developing that. But because it took so long, Open House really needed to start developing other programming and services. And so we have a very robust training program working to train providers in long-term care settings and in senior centers and other social service providers of how to work competently and with humility with LGBTQ older adults. We have a very strong program working with transgender and gender nonconforming older adults. And that's a huge focus for us because oftentimes our transgender and gender nonconforming older adults are most marginalized. And so we have a specific program that we actually get funded through the city of San Francisco, which is amazing, working there. And then we're starting a rather large project with Unlock. And Unlock was the organization that created the PACE program. And that's all-inclusive care for the elderly. The site that we have is at 75 Laguna Street, and that is going to be an adult day center. So not as clinical, but adult day center. And that is really going to, I think, change the way Open House provides services and programming, and just the partnership with Unlock, which, it's an amazing organization. They're in their 50th anniversary year. It's a great partnership. And they're very committed to learning and working in, a more competent, humble way with LGBTQ older adults. So those are sort of the broad brushstrokes of the work we do. We have social service provision, whether that's navigating through, we're the LGBTQ ADRC in the city, or through case management. And then of course we do a lot of programming, like I know the center does, and Imani, you probably do too in DC, you know, everything from watercolor to writing, you know, to online Tai Chi. Everything's online right now. We're not fully open as of yet.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kathleen. Imani, can you talk a bit about your programming?
Yes, thank you so much, Tim. So Kathleen, like you mentioned, it's taken so long for Mary's House for older adults to be built that we had to do some programming. And then COVID came and we really had to pivot and put some programming together because our folks were being isolated and really terrified, especially, I don't know if you all remember when some government officials were saying, let old people take a hit for the team. Right, like, you know, and still the ethical requirements that are being talked about in terms of medical equipment, defibrillators, and that, you know, the ventilators and that kind of stuff. So Mary's House created some health and wellness programs, virtually, of course, that provide information and fun. I guess we all do that, but the program that I'm most proud of is our Reach Out and Touch program, which we had done a little bit prior to COVID. We'd go out and do we call it a shout out. We let the elder know that we were on our way, get to their house. They'd come out and we just wave at them and talk, and somebody would run up and give something, you know, maybe some flowers, maybe some fruit or whatever that kind of thing is. During COVID though, we made telephone calls, we provided PPE for folks, and we still do that. And we ask the questions, how are you doing? And do you need anything? It's hard for folks, especially elders, to say that they need something because no one wants to be dependent. And, you know, I'm realizing this the older I get, right? I don't want to be seen as dependent. Oh God, what a thing, right? You know, I think we have to change the culture that we allow, that, you know, that you can use your friends. You don't have to abuse them, but they are there, friends and neighbors to use. So those are our programs. And we do training too on culture humility. I just finished one with the DC Office on Aging in its wellness centers, because we're finding that, you know, at the top, folks they're on board, they get it, but in the hinterlands, not so much. I mean, even what was sort of surprising that I do a pre and post test and I heard people talking, and someone said, "What's the LGBTQ? What is that?" And that was amazing. I live in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
That's scary.
So yeah,
but there's a lot of scary things out there, right?
Yes, yes.
It's interesting. We have a little bit of crossover too. Engage did some programming. It was close to 1 million years ago now at Triangle Square, and I actually taught a writing class there. And one of the people that would attend the class, Kathleen knows this story, she's heard it too many times, but was Ivy Bottini, who I know that both Kathleen and Alan know her, and I got to ride in a car with her and listen to her stories and have her be a part of the class. And she, as you both know, she was very involved in the creation of Triangle Square, and that being the first affordable older adult LGBT place in America. So it was so amazing getting to know her. And I know she passed away earlier this year, and she was something else. She was a very special person.
I'll tell you, one of the most fun nights I had was at the Renberg Theater, which is at the center. They have a beautiful theater, and Ivy Bottini was doing her one-woman show. And, you know, she's practically blind, but for some reason she had cards, and she's like, I can't read that. And she would just throw it away. I mean, it was absolutely hilarious. So yeah.
She had a bit of a personality, that one. So can we talk about LGBTQ housing in general? That, you know, what is it? Why do we need it? What is different about it than traditional housing? And especially, what are the specific needs that are unique to the LGBTQ population as they get older? Alan, can you give that a start?
Yeah, I'll just pick up from something Imani said about talking about the pandemic, because it was a perfect example of what's needed and why it's important to have housing with wraparound services there. It's just because any kind of, we know that LGBT seniors and youth actually also you should have higher incidences, higher, disproportionately large impact from every societal kind of ill, for whether it's health or mental health or drug use issues. I mean, all these things are magnified in LGBT communities, and particularly at the two ends of the spectrum. So, so during the pandemic, people didn't have food. They, as Imani said, they were depressed, and mental health was suffered. And so to be able to have housing in which all services are made available through the housing agency, or whatever that is, to a community that is disproportionately affected by many of these things is just critical. And last month we made 307. I'm looking at our senior services director's report right now. We made 307 deliveries to 110 participants of food. We started a food pantry during the pandemic for everybody. Once a week, we give out big boxes of food to people, but we make the deliveries to seniors. So they can call up or sign up online to get food. We have something similar to what Imani talked about. It's called the Hello Club, that we just make phone calls to people to make sure that they're okay, and hey, and they turn into more like just sort of conversations, right? But if somebody needs something, then we have the wraparound services to provide to them as well. And so I think it just showed just how important senior housing for LGBT people was to go through this last year, and to see how, if you had those services, that you could then provide to them, what a difference that makes. So it's really exciting to hear that, Kathleen, that you all are going to have an actual center where people can come to, because that creates the link between these two communities too.
Fantastic. Kathleen, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, I think that probably a lot of us did similar things within the community of, we have the home delivered grocery service every Monday that gets delivered. And we had staff that were, each staff member had a list of community members to call during the pandemic to do sort of check-in calls. And it's sort of what our friendly visitor program kind of morphed into in a way. I want to bring up another point, though, which I think Alan was saying, but just to make it a little more, maybe a sharper point, most LGBTQ older adults do not connect with their local senior center. And so when these services were needed during the pandemic, I mean, this was years ago that we did that survey, Alan, of participants in Los Angeles, but it was something like 4% had ever even gone to their local senior center in Los Angeles. And so we've then become the safety net within our own community. And having housing provides you with just sort of a scale that you wouldn't have as just a small little center. So, we have the Bob Ross Senior Center, which is a community center. It's unfortunately not open right now, but then we also have community space in 55 Laguna, that Openhouse housing building, that we're able to use those spaces to create programming that then can go out to people. And I just think it's important, no matter what the size, because I think, Imani, you brought up a really good point about, scale, because not everybody wants to live in a big place. Some people might want to live in a smaller, more intimate setting. And so we need all of the options available to LGBTQ seniors, just like, their heterosexual counterparts have lots of options. But I think that what this pandemic really showed is there's a lot of resiliency in our community. And we oftentimes, I think we need to take a step back and really realize what the amount of service that we're providing to our community. And I'm glad that, LA Department of Aging Services is paying for the LGBT Center services, thank God, finally. And we have a great relationship with DAS here, Department of Aging Services in San Francisco. And that's the way it should be across the country, that LGBT housing and the services that can be provided through it need to be supported locally with local funding and local government funding.
Yeah, it's just to back up what Kathleen said is, for years, we were one of the largest, the center had one of the largest senior centers in the city, probably county. And they were funding a lot of other senior centers, but they were not funding one that was specifically addressing the issues of LGBTQ seniors. And it took literally years. It started back with Kathleen and then has gone through now the current senior services director and our policy director and any number of people to fight to get that money directed to a service that was already serving hundreds and hundreds of people every week, and it was now good on the city, they're doing it and we're really happy with them, but we had to fight for it. And this is, I think, what we've learned. One thing we've learned in our community over and over again, whether it's through the AIDS epidemic or other kinds of challenges we've had, is that you have to fight, and we're good at it. We're really good at it.
Right.
And you shouldn't have to.
Yeah,
every city, we mirror kind of what Alan's saying in California and Washington, D.C. It's been in the last 5 years that the city has actually provided funds to the DC Center, which provides the DC LGBTQ Center that provides funds to our folks. And that was a fight. It was Mary's House for Older Adults in the DC Center in the fight with the city. I've had council members say, not really understanding, why do we need separate services for LGBTQ? Why? She really couldn't understand why we wanted to build Mary's House when we had many senior centers. So that was interesting. So that might be part of the technical assistance that we provide, right? City officials, you need to fund your LGBTQ SGL agencies. I wanted to talk about aging in place, housing, when we talk about aging in place a little bit.
Yep.
So Washington has about, I don't know, more than 15 villages. And one of the things that has happened in the last 5 years is pulling them into caring for LGBTQ SGL folks, having agenda, having programming that includes them, having them look through their programming with an LGBTQ SGL lens, which is awesome, and so that's part of the housing availability, is, in my opinion, is part of making available affordable housing with direct services, or I like what Alan said, wraparound services, because that's what we need. That's what all elders need. And Kathleen, like you said, many elders don't use our facilities because of the stigma, of the discrimination. We're pushing here to get the clients or members culturally trained with cultural humility, right? Because that's where the rubber meets the road, right? We hire staff, we can fire staff, and it's the law. But how do you press it's the law onto folks who utilize the facility? So, we're teaching like a zero tolerance kind of model in your policies, and making it, we really pushed looking through elderhood, seniorhood through an LGBTQ SGL lens this year. And so every health and wellness facility in the city during June had rainbows. Talk about the commotion that came up from the community. Some of the community, those community members I said earlier didn't know what LGBTQ was. There was a hue and cry, and now that Pride is over, I learned there's some comments saying we're going to keep that up all year. We've been pressing, saying that it's not only June, right? It's all the time now. So we will see.
Just to underscore your point about not feeling welcome. Kathleen can talk about our trips to Washington to talk to the Department of Veteran Affairs. And one thing we experienced here at the center was we had seniors who were coming in saying that they were in the military and had, served their country, and they had never once been to the VA because, one, their experience as a queer person in the military was bad to begin with. But then when they only heard bad stories about when people would go and try to be served at the VA. So Kathleen, you can kind of talk about going to the department under the Obama administration, where there at least was opening for us to go talk to them.
Well, yeah, at least we were able to get it through the door.
Yeah.
Right. I think the thing that I hate most when someone says to me is, well, we treat everyone the same. And that was really, I think every single person we met with at the VA said, no, this is the VA, Kathleen. We treat everybody the same. As well, not everybody is the same. I mean, some people have heart conditions, some people have something wrong with their hip. I mean, you can't treat everybody the same. But I do think that was a successful program, but it was, again, I think we really had to work locally, and it was demonstrating through the West LA VA that we could really have an impact, and doing trainings with, again, their frontline staff, their social workers and their enrollment specialists, and then having, the negotiation of having them come to the center to do what's called a stand down, which is, sort of a big fair for the VA to sign people up for different benefits that they're eligible for. So, yeah, I mean, the door was cracked open, but I think, Imani, what you were saying too, just about the importance of, the city funding different organizations when they say, well, we already provide these services, but, really all those doors to those senior centers are often, they might as well just be locked for an LGBTQ senior because they don't feel welcome there. And I'm not sure if this is a good time or not to talk about the new decision that came down from the 3rd District Court. Is that, so, I think one thing, and the three of us know this, the cultural humility training is really, it's behavior training. How do you change your behavior to best serve your resident, your client, et cetera? And unfortunately, in California, the 3rd District Court has decided to strike down a portion of the LGBT, I'm going to read this so I get it wrong, the LGBT Long-Term Care Facility Residents Bill of Rights. So this is a Bill of Rights for LGBTQ seniors who live in long-term care facilities like nursing homes or assisted living or even memory care. And the portion they struck down was around misgendering transgender elders, or what we call dead naming people. And dead naming is just, using the name that they were maybe given by their parents, that, that person is gone now and I'm now my full self and here's my new name. And this is being done on the auspices of freedom of speech for the person who works in the long-term care facility. And, I couldn't believe the article when I read it today, because this is really allowing people, and you can do it either by mistake or on purpose. So purposefully misgendering someone or using their dead name is considered a freedom of speech issue, and that it's just inartful speech. And really, this is harmful speech. This is speech.
Hate speech, in essence.
Well, it's bullying. It's really
at the worst, disrespectful.
So, we are really looking for avenues. Obviously we put out a statement saying that this is, we're totally opposed to this, but also looking for avenues and partnerships, because it certainly is something that needs to be challenged. We should not be creating environments that are less hospitable to our transgender elders who, are oftentimes the most marginalized within our community. And now this court is basically saying it's okay to further marginalize people. And when you live in a nursing home or assisted living, that's your home. So you're no longer safe in your domestic environment. And this court says that's okay because of the freedom of speech component.
It's amazing that that can happen in a time like this too, after Governor Newsom put so much effort into creating task forces around aging and Alzheimer's and creating a master plan for aging, how that did not end up being included in the master plan for the state of California. There should be training, and there should be expectations for the people that work in these places and how they treat the people who they care for.
Well, and California was always at the forefront. I mean, when I was up in
Yes.
Oregon, I would always say, well, look at all the great things we done in California. Because we would use that when we would do trainings down here, saying, well, you have to train your staff on this stuff. And the center at one point was hired by, oh gosh, now I can't remember it, but it was a academic excellence. I can't remember, the Academy of Academic Excellence, to actually train the aging services staff in the state of California. And I think we did 9 or 10 trainings all throughout the state. So yeah, for this to come down by this court, I mean, I know it's going to be challenged, but it's such a disrespectful read of what it means to misgender someone or to use their dead name, that it's harmful. It's harmful to not just people's psyche, but deep inside. And, we already have a lot of suicide ideation. We don't need to pile on to people.
Yeah.
I think it really points to what Imani was talking about in terms of aging in place and looking at the full aging cycle, because it seems like, there's a lot being done with LGBTQ housing on the younger, older adult side. But I think the long-term care piece needs to be addressed as well, it seems, because that, you have much bigger issues. And these are people of a generation that have been through a lot in terms of being persecuted for their sexual preference.
Yeah, I'm almost speechless on this. That is just so horrible. The environment in our nursing homes is like the residents are the guests and the staff is the owners, right? And so, and we should somehow try, and I work every day to do this, but we should try to change that environment so that the residents are the owners and the staff are the guests. So, and if you have that kind of mindset, then there's no way you can name someone, or in your golden years, you have to still worry about this stuff. And as you were talking, Kathleen, I'm thinking, I can see so many people back in the closet. I was doing some research and people were not coming out there because it wasn't safe. And this just makes it more unsafe. It just me sitting here, it just makes me want to cry. It's really changing the environment for the worse.
Yeah.
Alan, I think you're still on mute there. I hope you're going to talk about the positive bill you were talking about prior, and give us a little more hope.
I think you're still on mute.
Yeah, there we go. 2 things. First of all, if you look at this from the perspective that these are people that probably had to fight to be called the gender they truly are, and they won. They did. In California, we have laws now that protect people to do this. It's on your license. I mean, and now this. It's sort of shocking. But so yes, on the more positive side, this is how Kathleen and I often work. The state has just last week, and the governor signed a state bill or Senate Bill 258, which essentially it's called the HIV and Aging Act, and it designates older people with HIV as a population of, quote, greatest need, and will help to improve access to a wide range of services and supports for older adults, which is really, really important, because my generation that first experienced the AIDS pandemic is now, in need of greater healthcare than other people part of that generation. So this is a really important thing. It will put money into that and designate this as a So it should help a lot of social services agencies that want to serve older people with HIV.
Fantastic. We talked a little bit about intergenerationality amongst LGBTQ people and especially in housing and programming. Is that an opportunity, do you think, to help people on both ends or maybe three ends of the spectrum with across generations, but also is that a way to potentially help with advocacy and how people think about this group of people in general? I mean, obviously older LGBTQ adults are stricken by two forms of being invisible, by virtue of ageism and being persecuted for their sexual preference. So, but it seems to me like the younger generations are starting to get it, and it seems to me that we're making some movement towards acceptance and hope. Am I wrong about that?
Who's going to jump in? Go ahead, Alan.
No, go, Kathleen.
I guess what I would say is that, well, there are a couple of things. I mean, one is I think that we like to use, I'll just say for me, I'm not going to say for everybody, but when I hear the word preference, it's still like, little hairs go up in the back of my neck that, it's not a choice. I certainly didn't choose, to be a lesbian. It's my orientation. It's who I am. I think that, we look around and we look at a lot of policies that have changed and opening and, certainly way more visibility, and the internet has helped a lot to reduce isolation, especially for younger people. And we still have a vastly outnumbered number of LGBTQ kids that are in foster care or living on the street. And so all of these things, yes, there's lots of positive things moving forward, but, I'm hopeful. And at the same time, it's like, we still have an issue. We still have to look at addressing the issue that younger people are having within the LGBT community of not feeling safe, and whether that's not feeling safe in school or not feeling safe in their home or what have you. So that's sort of one piece. And then I do think that in intergenerational, and the center does this down in Los Angeles, and we do have an intergenerational funded program called Intergen. So we do connect people, but in terms of housing, and this obviously is something that we've talked about before, Tim, if you're going to create a community for all ages, you're going to have to change the way the funding streams come out, and you can't have funding streams that are just for families or just for seniors. There has to be some kind of wall that's broken down so that you can actually create housing that is intergenerational. And I know at the center, I mean, that was a huge piece of figuring out the puzzle of how do you create this campus of senior housing and youth housing, and all of that money, all those money streams are very different, and it just becomes very complex. So is there a way to simplify that? Because I do think there is a huge benefit, not just in our community, in all communities, of connecting generations again.
Imani, what do you think?
We're working on something, or we were working pre-COVID. I was working with the city's age in place department, and the Wanda Austin House, which houses young people from, I think, 18 to 30 or something like that. And we were working on trying to have folks housed together, intergenerational folks housed together in the elders' house, in the elders' home. So it'd be like a home share, and trying to put that piece together. We were finding it hard to fund, but more importantly, we found it hard to kind of manage. We were, both of these are vulnerable populations, right? So that was the big piece. I think we got stuck on that. How do you manage making sure that the elder is not abused by the young person? How do you make sure that the young person is not abused by the elder? And but we were going to give stipends to the elder for taking care of or not taking care of, for having the person live with them, and stipends for the younger person to do simple companionship like jobs, changing the light bulb, cutting the grass, that kind of thing. So we're working on that. I'll keep you all updated. But it's a hard hoe to road. Kathleen, you're not kidding about trying to figure out funds that I don't know where you are, but here everything is so political and everybody's trying to grab that, what they consider that small piece of the pie. And so that's how it's going.
Yeah, Ellen, we're lucky in LA because we have the Eisner Foundation for one thing. That helps with that bucket of funding quite a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would say that Imani's right. It's a hard road to hoe, and it's also a hard road to hoe because ageism cuts across all sexual orientations and gender identity. I mean, it really does. And I don't, these programs like the Culinary Program we're doing are like just little chinks in the wall of, breaking that down. But boy, as you get older, you really feel that, what you heard other people talking about, like the invisibility of for people in our culture in general, right? So, it doesn't go away just because you're LGBT. I mean, it's still there. But I do think that we have some, shared oppression in some ways binds you together. And I think that we see that with our young people and our older folks, that shared oppression sometimes is kind of a key that unlocks some kind of joint or joined identity. And it's kind of nice when it happens, but it takes work, as Imani was saying.
And this just came to me before I lose this thought, is that, it looks as if we as a community, LGBTQ SGL community, that we've come a long way. And we definitely have since the Eisenhower years, right? When Eisenhower signed the executive orders that you couldn't even work if you were gay, you couldn't even work in the federal government, and that big moral outcry. So you can get fired as a teacher. I mean, it was so legal for everything and so moral that people really stayed in the closet. And now we have our children who are saying, I'm non-binary. They have pushed the envelope, so that, we in the community better catch up with these children, right? Because they're not going for a lot of the things that we kind of went for. But at the same time, we have this law that came out that said, Kathleen, the law that you were speaking of, that took away 1/3 of elders' long-term care rights. And so I look at this, and I look at it in kind of the same manner of, folks say, we've come a long way since Jim Crow, or when people were enslaved. And I say, yeah, I don't cross the street. I'm not, there's certain things I do that make me know that I stand on the shoulders and things have changed. But we had the murder of Floyd, right? So it feels crazy making to me, right? That I almost feel gaslighted in some sense sometimes, right? Because yes, things are going forward, but if we don't keep the pressure up, we don't keep advocating, we don't pass the baton to the younger folks and keep advocating, it's going to continue to be a hard hoe to row. Someone said to me once, if your rights are given, they can always be taken. So that was profound to me, right? Civil rights, LGBTQ rights, women's rights. So if someone has the power to give you something, do they not also have the power to take that away?
And obviously, politically, we've seen that the pendulum swing back and forth between progression and regression for the last 30 years. In terms of housing, there are quite a few. There's more options now for LGBTQ elder housing. What are the obstacles that need to be removed? What barriers need to be removed to create more of these places? I assume there's a great need for this. What do we need to do for advocacy, for funding, for removing barriers to get more of these places created in cities everywhere? Alan?
So from the perspective of building the housing, it has become so incredibly expensive because of the regulations and zoning, and that it drives up the price so much of individual units, especially in areas like the three where we live in that are expensive to begin with, right? So there just has to be some allowance when you're building affordable housing that at the same time it's protecting the safety of the future residents, which is some of the rationale behind some of these things, but to allow some kind of flexibility on this, because it's just ridiculously expensive and takes forever to get the approvals necessary. And so government has to be engaged in a way that allows this house, that encourages this housing rather than puts it on the same level as a complex that's going to charge $2 million for a condo unit. I mean, it's not the same thing, and we have to start acknowledging that in the regulations and the processes to get it built. It's very depressing to think like what it cost, and I'm going to say the name because I haven't said it yet, in the Ariadne Getty Foundation Senior Housing, because after all, she was very important in making this happen. So, but it is depressing to see how much each of those units cost. I mean, and it's that obviously is also going to drive up the rents on them too, which, so you kind of, they're still going to be good value for people, but it's just, we've got to change the laws around this, or else I think, we're going to be destined to we also have to change people's hearts, because, everybody loves affordable housing, except in my neighborhood, right?
Exactly.
So that has to change too. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. Imani, what do you think?
I was just going to name one thing. I so agree with Alan. Alan, it's so hard. We're building, and when we first started this 12 years ago, the units were one price, and in those 12 years, it's gone up so much that I'm questioning what affordability really means, right? So we'll have some vouchers and some assistance, but yeah, what does affordable really mean? Another barrier is that the city, when it helps you, they want to house people that they need to house too. So I don't know if in California you all have permanent supportive housing. That,
yes.
Guys, gals, and everybody else, that is what? So we have this communal housing, and we have 3 units that are supposed to be permanent supportive housing, and usually the people they need assistance. There should be some transition, some bridge before they get to live in a community that is fully functioning. That's my voice on that, especially when I'm talking about communal living, like housing like that. But folks aren't necessarily. It's not a skill they have, maybe, or they're not taking their meds, or they're not doing the 12-step. They're not doing what they need to do, and that puts a real wrench on the success of the project, right? If it's successful, and how the other residents. So that's a barrier I see, Tim, in, once you're trying to lease up, and that's where we are, right? Trying to lease up, and we're getting a pushback for this. I think some conversation needs to be had all over that, we kind of talk about this.
Yeah. Kathleen?
Yeah, I mean, I just echo back what both Imani and Alan have said. I think the only slight turn that I'd make is, and a lot of this is because of cost, and what Imani was saying, like questioning what is affordable. we are basically building affordable housing for people who are at like 50% of the AMI. And people who are homeless are not at 50% of the area, median income. They're at 0, or maybe if they're
Right.
lucky, 10.
Right.
And so, what are we doing to actually develop that type of housing as well? And then providing the services, because, if you're an older adult who's living on the street, if you're 55 or 60 and you live on the street for a year or more, you're aging so much more
So rapidly. Yes.
Yeah. So how can we develop housing with services for those people as well? And we know that there's a disproportionate number of LGBTQ youth on the street. And now we're starting to see that there's a disproportionate number of LGBTQ older adults living on the street. And so how do we actually create the funding mechanisms to develop housing with services for those folks as well?
Yeah, Los Angeles and San Francisco are mecca for the homeless population as well. It's gotten much worse during the pandemic. So it's not something that's going to go away anytime soon either. Well, thank you all very much for being on Experience Talks. This has been, I could do this for another 2 hours, but I think we all have jobs, if I remember correctly. So we should get back to work and actually doing what we're talking about.
You got to cry
I'm going to
for
have
another
dinner.
2 hours too. I'm sorry, Imani.
Well, thank you all very much. It's been a fantastic conversation. I thank you all three for your terrific work and continued success in it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to
Good
see you,
to see
Imani
you,
and Alan.
Kathleen and Alan.
Yes, nice to meet you, Imani. Bye-bye.
Take
you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.